everything that we thought we knew is called into question. Maybe we're not alone. Maybe our company does not wish us well.
Biggest discovery in human history.
These tapes have to be considered the Holy Grail.
You know, we all want to put an end to this. Tonight we get our chance.
Just keep filming.
Do you want a selfie?
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of Fresh Cuts. This is Mike. Joining me as always is Mr. Venom. What's up, Venom?
Greetings, found footage and anthology lovers. How the hell you doing, Mike? I'm doing pretty well.
I'm doing well, just enjoying this October 100-degree day.
Only 96 where I am.
Yeah. Anyways,
I'm loving it, though. Yeah, you guys are the ones who like fall. I like the holiday in fall, but I don't like the weather, so I'm very okay with this extended heat.
All right. Well, also with us, it's Don and Ellie. What's up, Don?
Hey, what's going on? Always happy to be here.
All right. Well, for this episode, we actually had like a bunch of choices this week. There was nothing widely released theatrically, at least. So we turned to VOD, and there was actually like a ton of releases, but the one we landed on was the new franchise entry from the VHS series. What is this, like the 6th or 7th one by now? I'm starting to lose track.
Yep, 7th.
All right. Yeah, because
there was
they don't
3
number
before.
them traditional, so
Yeah, there was 3 before, and then this is the 4th one that Shudder's had since they picked it up.
okay, cool. All right, and this one is called VHS Beyond, and going into it, the gimmick was they were going to put like a little sci-fi twist on it. So we'll get into like how we thought they did with that and the segments and all that stuff. Synopsis on IMDb: 6 blood-curdling tapes unleash horror in sci-fi inspired hellscape, pushing the boundaries of fear and suspense. All right, I mean that kind of covers the idea of an anthology, telling you there's going to be 6 stories. It doesn't really tell you about any individual story, but that's probably good. We don't need a spoiler in our synopsis. So I think instead of like a walkthrough and all that, because there's like 6 different stories to get to, we're kind of just like have an open discussion about it. I don't mind if we want to give like some general overall thoughts first, but we'll pretty much get into it relatively quickly. So I will kick it to Venom. Overall, VHS Beyond, I mean, man, I feel like not pertaining to this one specifically, but just in general, people call them hit or miss, but I feel like for the most part, they're still good enough that when I get done with one, I always feel like fine that the franchise is still going. But Venom, what did you think overall of VHS Beyond?
Well, as I've said with every VHS review that we've ever done, I want to caveat this by saying I am a huge found footage fan and a huge horror anthology fan. In fact, if you have listened to the latest episode of the main show, No More Room in Hell, you see that we looked at a couple of Amicus anthologies, which were my picks because I love me some anthologies. And if you guys remember, those of you who've been listening for a few years, you remember that I've been kind of low on the last couple of VHS movies. I kind of felt that a lot of the stories were kind of youth oriented, had a younger cast, especially not the last one, but VHS 99. VHS 99 just had way too much youth-oriented stories, you know? That was the one with, like, the Medusa story and a couple of others. And they just, I don't know, they were okay, but, like, if I don't relate to anyone in the story, it's kind of hard for me to get behind anybody or, you know, really get into the story, things like that. Well, my friends, I'm very happy to report that VHS has done a bounce back. I absolutely loved VHS Beyond. This one to me feels the closest to VHS 94, which is my favorite in the franchise, in the sense that I loved every segment in it, but the wraparound is maybe a little weak. I will say the wraparound in this one is probably better than VHS 94, because, you know, the whole thing with the SWAT team and, you know, the supposed drug bust, it just didn't really work for me. This one at least had a little bit more to do with the overarching story of the whole thing, you know, having a sci-fi tinge to it. But my friends, I'm also very happy to report that this movie is still solidly horror. Like, a lot of us were worried when they announced that this was going to be a sci-fi entry, that we were going to get stories, you know, similar to like Independence Day or Fire in the Sky and stuff like that. That was just going to be so hardcore sci-fi that it was going to turn me off. I'm not the biggest sci-fi fan. My wife is, so I do partake in it periodically. But yeah, Mrs. Venom is the sci-fi lover in the house. But let me tell you, just because you throw an alien in a story doesn't necessarily make it sci-fi. I know it does to some people, but to me, sci-fi has more to do with the science of it. And whereas VHS Beyond, yeah, you're getting stalked by an alien, but you're still getting stalked. It's still a slasher. You know, just because it's not Jason Voorhees, it's a gray alien from a spaceship. I don't know. Like, that to me in and of itself doesn't make it sci-fi. So the point is that I was very happy to see solid horror. I mean, still getting all the gore that we expect from VHS. Some just over-the-top, what-the-fuck type segments. One in particular that I'm going to gush over when we actually start talking about it. But yeah, overall, I had an absolute blast with this one. I've watched it 3 times in the last 2 days. Once yesterday and twice today. Yes, that's the life of an unemployed person. Lots of time to watch movies. But anyway, watching it twice, and literally as soon as I finished it the first time today, I started it up right again. I did the exact same thing with both VHS 2 and VHS 94, which are they definitely are my top 2 in the franchise. We don't usually rate our movies here or even rate like the franchise, you know, the order of the ranking of each movie in a franchise. But I mean, if we had to, you know, gun to head, I would have to say this is easily a top 4 in the franchise, maybe even top 3. Like I said, VHS 94 and VHS 2, I absolutely adore. I love every segment in there. I tend to say that VHS 94 is my favorite because it has my favorite horror anthology segment ever, bar none. But VHS 2 also has solid segments, and it has a much better wraparound. So you would think I would lean towards VHS 2, but yeah, 94, that Timo segment, just it's too much. I still gush at that segment, just thinking about it. But yeah, the long and the short of it is I'm going to cut this off now because we're obviously going to get into the individual segments in the wraparound. But the long and the short of it is this movie surprised me. This is probably my surprise of the year. This was so much better than I was expecting it to, because I wasn't happy with the last 2 entries in the franchise, and because they announced this to be a sci-fi entry. I literally had 0 expectations. I actually watched it yesterday when we had a different movie picked for this episode. And after watching it, I instantly jumped in the chat and said, guys, we might want to rethink our choice for movies this week, because I just had a blast with it. Not sure how my co-hosts are going to feel about it, but for me, absolute blast. The 2-hour runtime didn't bother me because, you know, all the segments are around 20 to 25 minutes long. The longest segment, I think, is the last segment of the movie, and that one is like maybe clocks in at like 28, 29 minutes. But that one is written by Mike Flanagan and directed by Katie Siegel. So that DNA alone right there makes me very excited to see a segment like that. And it obviously did turn out to be great with that kind of lineage behind it. So yeah, I had a really good time with VHS Beyond. I don't think it's going to be a top 10 by the end of the year. I can't even really say if it's a top 10 right now. If it is, it would be at the bottom of the top 10, maybe 9, 10, 11, somewhere in that range. But I still had a blast with this movie. It will be in contention, I would imagine. Like, I'll rewatch it at the end of the year, but I think that there's the middle of this year really came through, whereas the first 3 months of this year absolutely sucked ass for horror. The last 3, 4, 5 months have just been stellar. We're getting a lot of great movies. So yeah, I'm on board. And ultimately, because of the quality of the films we're getting this year, VHS Beyond probably will slip off my top 10, but I absolutely loved it. Had a great time with it. So I'll leave it at that for now.
All right, I'll throw it over to Don. What did you think of VHS Beyond?
Yeah, I'm kind of in a pretty similar boat, not just with the retrospective of the franchise, but the film as a whole. I still need viral. I still can't say that I've finished the series, but I still need viral, so I can't give a full rundown. But this is probably, I would say, at worst, fourth out of what I've seen. Probably may bump up or down, but I'm saying it's at least fourth. I did like 94 and 2 better. I'm still not sure where I land on 85. 85 is one that I kind of feel that this one's pretty similar to. I enjoy a couple of the segments. Some of them have great ideas, but they kind of falter when it comes to the found footage element. I wouldn't say it's a common recurrence, but in some of these segments, I felt that the found footage wasn't really necessary. That it could have been told as a straightforward film, and it would have been perfectly fine as is. I do enjoy a lot of the ideas here. I think there's only one segment that I didn't really like the concept behind it, but yeah, overall, I really enjoyed it. The visuals are still really fun, gorier than I thought. I wasn't really expecting this to be as much of a bloodbath as it is, but I think the first couple of segments kind of got me a little off guard, and I was like, oh, wow, okay, so yeah, we're really going for it now. So cool. That was definitely kind of a surprise. Petered out a little bit more when it went. The final segments went for a little bit more sci-fi angle, but I'm not terribly that disappointed. Again, there's only one that I didn't like the setup, but I did enjoy a lot of the other elements inside. Yeah, I was really surprised. It's definitely a lot better than what I thought was going to be the other film. I watched both of them today, not knowing which one for sure, and then took a gamble and said, okay, yeah, we're probably going to go with this one. So yeah, I can't say I was disappointed. I can't say it's going to be top 10. It'll probably remain on the fringes as an honorable mention for the top 10 list. But that's not counting what is going to come out for November and December, because I don't know what those schedules look like. So, maybe the final 2 months of the year are going to, push this one off. But yeah, it was definitely a surprise. Also kind of shocked at some of the segments. The length of this one is a little bit more than I expected. I know some of the other entries kind of clock in around the 140 to 150 mark. This one's a little closer to 2 hours, which was kind of a surprise. But yeah, overall, it's definitely a solid entry. It keeps the Shudder value, the Shudder exclusive part of the franchise in strong order. Yeah, it's again, don't want to say too much, but yeah, I had fun with it and enjoyed it, and definitely appreciated it. So yeah, kudos on again keeping the streak alive and keeping this area of the franchise in strong order.
All right, cool. So yeah, I really enjoyed this one as well. I've pretty much been a fan of most of the VHS movies to varying degrees. I think the only one that I would say was more like mediocre than not was Viral, and it's been a long time since that one, because I think that was like the third or the fourth one in the franchise. So it's been a while. But to me, ever since then, regardless of like how much I've liked or not liked it, it's never felt like they're just phoning it in. It always feels like they attempt to bring some new ideas or some type of concept that'll differentiate it. I mean, we know it's going to be found footage style. It's going to be so they're going to have to justify why all these stories are found footage. But this one, I pretty much liked every segment. I guess my only critique would be kind of something Dawn alluded to, where it felt like the last segment. I'm assuming they made it the last segment because it was the longest running time wise, but it felt like maybe because it was slower paced, and the story dealt with like, for the most part, one character almost. It felt a little bit of an odd choice to put last. So if I could critique one thing about VHS Beyond, it would be like maybe the arrangement. But other than that, like I still liked the segment and I still thought it was good. But other than that, I don't really have many complaints about this. And the fact that it was, I think it's one of the longer running time ones could give you pause, like when you like read that on like an IMDb page. It's like, oh no, like are they indulging too much? But no, pretty much I liked it. The movie starts off with a banger of a segment or story, I guess, that went way more over the top than I was expecting. And yeah, pretty much it doesn't let up. I like I said, I pretty much like all of it. There's one segment in the middle that was it kind of like reminded me of a movie that I probably can't even say at the time. Similar almost concept, but since we're saving spoilers, yeah. Say it again.
Is it a Kevin Smith movie that you're thinking of?
Yeah.
Yep. I love it.
Yeah, it made me think of that. But without getting into too much detail about each individual story, yeah, I liked it a lot. Where do I rank? It's hard for me to rank because honestly, most of them I haven't rewatched just because I don't tend to do a lot of rewatching of modern movies just due to lack of time and so much stuff to watch. I can say though, like for a rapid reaction, I'll say like probably is one of my favorite ones in a while. As far like I wouldn't be able to rank it off the top of my head, but I'm just gonna say like based on the one viewing and what I thought immediately after, maybe it's recency bias, but I don't care. I really enjoyed this one. I don't think there was a weak segment in there. And other than that, yeah, I'll kick it back to Venom.
Yeah, I'm going to say that the only complaint that I have is it's a stupid one because, suspension of disbelief, it's the kind of thing that you're not supposed to think about. But there are two segments in this film where I'm wondering how the hell did they get the footage? You know what I mean? This is a found footage movie. How did they find footage for two of these segments? It doesn't make sense. They literally were taken off planet. What did an alien bring the fucking footage back? It doesn't make sense. So yeah, and that's a minor nitpick ultimately. I am a found footage guy, and I'm always the kind of guy that like I wanna know. Why is the camera still on? Why is this person still holding the camera? Or is it a body cam or a helmet cam or something like, I need reasoning behind it. And then another thing that I need is the footage has to be findable, and so that's going to be, like I said, my biggest complaint with this movie is just that two of these segments don't make sense as to how we actually got the footage back. But I will say, man, we got a segment directed by Justin Long. Justin Long, the eternal horror movie douchebag, who just basically plays an asshole in every movie he's in, every horror movie he's in. Anyway, it seems like he plays the asshole. He actually directed what may be my favorite segment of this movie, and I know that's going to be a controversial one because it is the most over the top, what the fuck type segment. But it worked for me in so many ways. And probably because it reminded me of that Kevin Smith movie that a lot of people don't like, but I fucking love. I adore that film. It's not one of my favorite Kevin Smith movies. It's not even like a top 3, probably not even like a top 5 Kevin Smith movie. But I am a big Kevin Smith fan. I've seen him live multiple times. I went to the premiere of Clerks that he was at. I try to, be a part of anything that he does live out here in LA. And obviously he lives out here, so he's constantly doing like live podcasting or stand-up comedy, blah, blah, blah. So I try to see him as much as I can. So the fact that a segment in this movie reminded me of one of his movies just made me incredibly happy. But I think we've harped on enough. I mean, we've got 6 segments to talk about, an almost 2-hour film. Let's just get into it. What do you say, boys?
Sure. I also say that the aforementioned Kevin Smith movie you're talking about, I also like it a lot, and I don't get why it got so much hate, to be honest.
It's I think a lot of people look at it as not a very Kevin Smith movie. You know what I mean?
I mean, I understand, like, so for the portion of like the horror, because it's a diverse group of people, horror fans. For the ones that like tend to not like schlock, I understand, but like there's people that profess their love for that kind of stuff, yet they almost hated it for being schlocky. So maybe it's a disassociation from like, no, that's not what Kevin Smith is supposed to be. So like, I don't know, it didn't make sense to me, but anyways.
No, that's valid. Absolutely.
Yeah, we don't have to spend a whole bunch, but because you kind of brought that up, because like whenever I hear someone else that says they liked it a lot or even loved it, I'm like, yes, we need to talk about that more sometime, because I also liked it a lot.
Yeah. Oh, that's definitely a movie that'll come up in a future main show, I got a feeling. It'll be a theme. It'll be paired with something else similar to it. But yeah, I absolutely loved it. But at the same time, that was Kevin Smith's second horror movie, and the first one that he did, Red State, was so much different than this one. I think people just weren't expecting that. They weren't expecting body horror from Kevin Smith. They weren't expecting, Michael Parks playing this quirky character, blah, blah, blah. So, I don't know. Like I said, I just look at it as a people didn't expect, because Kevin Smith up to that point did nothing but goofball comedies and romantic comedies. That's pretty much all. And then whatever you count Dogma as, religious comedy, I guess. But yeah, that particular movie, which we've been skirting the issue. It's Tusk. For you guys who don't know, it's Tusk. Of course, it's Tusk. Probably one of the first Kevin Smith movies to come out and get universally hated by so many people. But the few of us that love it, I think, appreciate it for what it is. We don't take it seriously. It's a tongue-in-cheek type movie with a very sad ending, ultimately. I thought that ending was incredibly sad. But, that's a discussion for another show. Let's get into VHS Beyond. Okay. As we talked about, there are 6 segments involved, but it's 5 segments with the wraparound, which is kind of its own little segment. Basically, our movie opens up with almost like a documentary style, where we're watching an alien abduction, or just a belief in aliens documentary, where they're talking about footage that's been found that some people consider proof and other people consider hoaxes, blah, blah, blah. The same thing with ghost videos and any other supernatural type thing that you see like on, YouTube or TikTok or whatever. And they start talking about this young man, this Japanese family, very affluent family that lived in a big house. And apparently the entirety of the family died except for the oldest son. And he was basically left on his own, and he was a conspiracy theorist, specifically aliens. He believed in the existence of aliens, and basically spent the remainder of his life after his family died trying to prove or disprove the existence of aliens. So that's the setup for our wraparound. And in between each segment throughout the movie, when we go back to the wraparound, we get a little bit more information about the guy, about his family, about the house. So, it does kind of become its own little segment if you piece it all together, obviously. So after we get that introduction, we are told that there are 2 videos that this guy, the eldest son of this Japanese family, that he labeled Proof 1 and Proof 2. These are 2 videos that he recorded simultaneously that in his eyes should show proof of, the existence of aliens. But obviously, we're not going to see that footage for a little while, so we'll put it in the back of our heads for now. After that, we start our first segment. Our first segment is called Stork. It is written and directed by Jordan Downey. This one starts out, it looks like there's a police, like a special unit of the police getting together, and it looks like they're basically suiting up for a raid of some kind, either like a drug house or, whatever the case may be. While they're talking, we find out that there has been a series of abductions, infant abductions. Someone has taken, in the last 3 months, someone has taken 17 total infants. Literally, they kidnap them right out of their crib, and then they're just gone. They're never seen again. Now, obviously, it's only been 3 months, so the police are still investigating. On this particular night, the police get a tip that there was an eyewitness to another one of the abductions, but the eyewitness actually followed the abductor back to their house and then called the police and told them, hey, I saw this guy take a kid and take him here. So the police are, like I said, getting ready, getting all suited up, getting Rambo'd up, ready to go out. When they get to the house, it's a disheveled, dilapidated house out kind of in the, I wouldn't say the middle of nowhere, but definitely in a more rural area. And when they get there, they see a very menacing guy, like a very tall guy, like guy's got to be about 6'6" to 6'8". And he's just walking slowly, and he's carrying a chainsaw, and there's no lights on. This is all at night, so this is kind of night vision footage that we're seeing. And the guy, as he's walking into the house, he notices that the police are there. He actually turns around, looks at them, and then just turns right back and continues slowly walking into the house. Of course, the police end up going in. As it turns out, one of the members of the police team is a father of one of the kids that's been abducted. Why the fuck they would allow this guy to go on this job is beyond me. I don't think there's any real police team that would ever let this guy. It's a conflict of interest. It doesn't make any sense. But again, suspension of disbelief will allow it. And his damn name was E.T. Of all things, his fucking name was E.T. So more sci-fi references for you. So like I said, they basically end up breaking into this house. They don't see anything. There's not really a lot of furniture. Like I said, it's an old abandoned house. But then there's like a noise trap. There's basically like a rope hanging from the ceiling, and there's bottles and cans attached to it. It's basically a noise trap. Once one of the cops sees it and literally like hits it, like, what the fuck is this? The shit hits the fan from that moment. Literally from that moment, people start coming out of the woodwork, down the stairs, up the stairs, from the basement, out of the living room. And at first they look like just basic zombies. They're basically, they're not speaking, they're growling, and they're basically attacking our police team. We end up getting a bunch of kills, not of the police officers, but of the cops shooting all of these weird possessed people, if you will. We'll call them possessed for now. That's not the correct answer, but we'll get to that. And then after taking out probably a couple of dozen of these possessed people, the original guy from outside with the chainsaw makes an appearance, and he is just fucked up looking. Like I said, he's tall as hell. His jaw isn't quite attached. His eyes are completely white. They're just whited over, no pupils, no nothing. And they finally are able to take him down. And when they take him down, they start taking closer looks at all the victims, all the people. And we start to see the demonic ass faces that they all have. Basically white eyes and what looks like metal teeth. Maybe not metal, but metallic looking somehow. And they're all kind of stuck in that evil grin. Like, even after they die, their teeth are fully exposed and, almost like they have a crazy grin on their face. After a while, they continue investigating the house. They find out that there's a barrier blocking them from the attic. There's something in the attic because they hear movement. They hear footsteps up there, but there's a bunch of debris in the stairwell leading up to the attic. So they end up going back downstairs, grabbing the chainsaw. But when they grab the chainsaw, our chainsaw-wielding construction worker gets up, very zombie-like, ends up getting up. Luckily, the police lieutenant is now holding the chainsaw and ends up cutting this big guy in half. And then suddenly we start hearing like shuffling in the background. The cops turn around and we get this great shot of all the possessed people that they just killed are all standing up staring at them. And then literally the attack begins again. But this time they now realize that their bullets are probably not going to do too much damage because they're going to keep getting up. So they eventually all go up to the attic. They get the debris out of the way with the chainsaw. They get up to the attic. And the first thing they run into is actually probably one of the creepiest things in this segment. They run into a guy who in the credits is credited as the pale-face babysitter. But this guy has the most fucked up face. Like, again, white eyes, metallic looking teeth, but with this giant fucking grin. The closest thing I could think of, I don't know if anybody out there watches Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the old show from the 90s. There were antagonists on that show called the Gentleman. And if anybody remembers the Gentleman, that's exactly what these fucking possessed, demonic, whatever you want to go with, people look like. And it's pretty fucking insane. So finally, they get up to the attic, and they, as they're investigating a room, one possessed guy walks in, but he doesn't attack anybody. It's a big black dude. He doesn't attack anybody right away. He just walks in and kind of stands there. The cops are staring at him like, what do we do? The police lieutenant gives the order to not shoot him in the head because they don't want to get the crap all over him, the stuff that's coming out of these people, which we all assume is blood, and I don't know why this police investigator didn't assume it was blood as well, but he basically ends up shooting the guy in the kneecaps, takes out both of his kneecaps so that the guy is kneeling on the ground, but he's still quiet and not moving. He's not struggling. He's just kind of sitting there. Now, at this point, the police officers realize that all the people that have attacked them all have a bandage on their forehead. They all have the exact same wound. And at this point, the police lieutenant peels off one of these bandages off the forehead, and it looks like just a basic like bullet wound or like, something, a blunt instrument, just caved in their head. But then, and I forgot to mention that, of course, the police officers have a videographer with them, which is why we're watching all of this footage, because they took a videographer with them. The police lieutenant asks the videographer to come over to the possessed person and point the camera inside the hole to see if he can see what might be in there. My friends, when the camera zooms in, there's nothing in there. Literally, the head is empty. There's no brains, no nothing. Just a skull and a little bit of tissue inside. So, of course, they're freaking out. Like, what the hell is taking the brains out of these things? And instantly I started laughing, thinking, oh, these people are all brainless. They must be Trump supporters. Sorry. Anyway, after that, they end up killing the one docile possessed guy, and they continue going up the stairs up into the house. Like I said, they run into the pale-faced babysitter who they don't even bother him. Like, literally, he's holding in his arms one of the kidnapped infants. But the cops don't chase him. They literally just let him walk out of the room. Granted, they get distracted by something else, but I thought it was weird that at least one police officer didn't follow that guy. Because, he's got one of the kidnapping victims in his arms, but whatever. Then the big what the fuck moment of this segment. When the cops finally get all the way up to the attic, they see that it's a makeshift nursery. There's cribs all over the place, and there's babies in the cribs, and the babies are all alive. You can hear like cooing and crying and things like that. But when the police investigator or the lieutenant pulls a sheet off of one of the babies, we see that the baby looks like a fucking zombie. It looks like it's been dead and rotting for like a few months now. It almost looks like the baby from The Sadness. From a couple of years ago. That fucked up baby in the trash can. But anyway, and then they hear another noise, and it sounds like a bird. And when they turn around and shine the light towards it, it is a fucking bird. It is a giant stork. It almost looks like Big Bird without the feathers. Like if somebody plucked Big Bird completely, just leaving the pink flesh underneath, I feel like that's what we're looking at. We're looking at a mutated Big Bird. But we finally see what this bird is doing. He's literally sucking out the brains, and we see him do it to E.T., the cop who had his child kidnapped. We literally see him put his, like, what's it called? The bill? Stick it in his fucking head like a straw, suck the brains out of his head, and then it goes over to one of the kidnapped infants in the crib and regurgitates the brains into the child. Yes, my friends, this bird is feeding these children, and in feeding these children, it's mutating them somehow. It's changing them. Their skin tone looks different. They you know, you could see their veins more. Like, there's very obviously a very specific plan that this stork, I'll call it, since the title of the segment is stork, I'll call it a stork, I guess, an alien stork. And eventually the cops are just kind of staring at this thing in disbelief, because literally it's like a 7-foot stork. It's taller than any of the police officers in the room. And finally the police lieutenant just says, okay, light them up. And literally all the cops there, I think at this point there's 5 of them left, they all pretty much just empty all of their clips into this thing, and it finally falls down. And right before the thing falls, it actually stabs the videographer in the stomach with its beak. And, you know, the camera falls down, and it doesn't move again after that point. The videographer doesn't die. He's actually helped up to his feet, and they walk out. And then we actually see like a door close, and the stork is still on the ground. And obviously we're savvy horror viewers, so we're like, what the fuck? Double tap. That thing's going to get up again, just like everything else in the house got up. But then suddenly you start hearing these running steps, sound effects of footsteps going up the stairs. The door opens again, and all you see is a boot just fucking curb stomp the stork, just destroying its head. And then the cops prop it up to take a picture with it. And then this is where we find out, right at the end of this segment, that these aren't normal cops. This is what they do. They are like a monster squad. Sorry, bad pun, I know, but that's basically what they are. They hunt monsters. So they obviously knew that there was something supernatural or whatever that was kidnapping these kids, that it wasn't just a normal, because, you know, 17 in 3 months out of the same town, like, I don't think there's a human that would be that good and not get caught. So yeah. But yeah, that's the end of our first segment. It just ends with that shot of the surviving cops standing around the propped up dead body of the stork in a black and white picture. Just a great way to start.
Great way to start the movie.
Yeah. I mean, what did you guys think of the stork? Like when you first saw him, what the hell? Like, I thought they were doing another cuckoo story, because the cuckoo story seems to be very popular over the last couple of years. But as it turns out, it's more of a reverse cuckoo, whereas a cuckoo would lay its eggs in another nest and let that bird raise its young. This thing is actually taking human babies and trying to, I guess, assimilate it into what they are. So it's almost like a reverse cuckoo. But I mean, the original question, what'd you guys think when you first saw it? Were you laughing? Were you freaked out? What?
I was like, what the hell? Holy shit. What is that? Because, like, it's, from what I remember, it doesn't necessarily, like, lead to clues that that's what it's going to be. I was just enjoying, like, everything's, like, leading up to that whatever they turned out to be, whether they were, like, robots, like, alien humanoid looking things, and then we get that bird creature thing, and it's like, what the hell? But it was great. I mean, I loved the segment.
Yeah, I thought it came out of nowhere. I totally dug it. Don, what'd you think of that?
Yeah, the first thing was actually that was like one of the few legitimate jump scares I've had. Just yeah, the design's amazing. I love the way it looks. This is one of my favorite segments of the film. I think there's one later that may top this one, but yeah, it was one of my favorites, and it was a kind of a surprise when I first saw it.
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely wasn't anticipating a fucking 7-foot bird. I definitely was thinking a gray alien or something like that. But I gotta say, too, I will give the movie credit that at no point do we see any of the traditional gray aliens. Like, even at the very end of the movie, when we see the quote-unquote proof, That alien looks fucking different and awesome. I'm not going to get into it now. We'll get into it in a little bit. But yeah, I like the fact that there's no traditional gray aliens in here, because that's part of what I hate about sci-fi, is the similar interpretation of aliens. Like, you know, it doesn't do a whole lot for me. But like I said, this movie kind of usurps that expectation. So thank you. I loved it. All right. So after that segment, we go back to our wraparound. We learn a little bit more about the Asian guy who's now living in his house by himself, trying to prove the existence of aliens. We find out that he disappeared one day off the face of the earth. No one knows what happened to him. And because he disappeared, they weren't able to ever sell the house. Obviously, you know, people are going to start rumors. The house is haunted, or, you know, potentially, you know, whatever the case may be. So, but they were able to empty the house out, sell off all the furniture, but the house just sits there. So that's a little bit more information on the wraparound. So after this, we go to our second segment, and this one is called Dream Girl. This is our only foreign segment of the movie. So this one is from India. It is in Indian. Most of it's in Indian. There's a little tiny bit in English, but for the most part, you still kind of need the subtitles because of the heavy accents throughout. But yeah, this one opens up. We're following two members of the paparazzi. Their names are Arnab and Sonu, S-O-N-U. So Sonu and Arnab. They are members of the paparazzi. They're obviously not important paparazzi. They're kind of junior level people. We see them trying to get pictures of a celebrity as she's exiting her house or a building, whatever it is that she's exiting. Unfortunately, the photographer, like Arnab is the main guy and Sonu is the photographer. Unfortunately, all the shots that he took were all blurry, not focused on, the subject. Nothing was usable. So, of course, there's this back and forth. At one point, the driver of that celebrity's car actually hits Arnab as they're pulling out. You guys know how paparazzi are. They'll literally surround a celebrity's car trying to get a picture. But in India, they don't have the hang-ups that we have here, because this guy literally just ran right into this photographer, literally got a piece of glass stuck in his arm, which it has no bearing on the story. I thought it was going to have more bearing, but it literally has none. Just he cut himself. So then they get a phone call from their editor, and the editor is saying that the new hottest girl in Indian cinema is shooting a movie right near where you guys are, and I was able to get one of the crew members to let you in to potentially get pictures of her, maybe even talk to her. So they agree. They go to the location. When they get there, it's your traditional Bollywood style movie being shot. In fact, they're actually shooting the musical sequence in this scene. So, our two paparazzi guys are on set watching this scene get shot. Now, eventually, the main girl, the dream girl, if you will, Tara, I think they call her Tara in this, T-A-R-A. Tara, at one point, messes up her dancing, her steps, which kills the take. Apparently, they're trying to get this entire fucking musical sequence shot in a single take, which is almost impossible, but whatever. So she ends up messing up her steps. They have to cut the take. I don't know if it's the director or her manager or her agent. It's somebody who's, important to her, I guess, basically starts yelling at her, starts telling her, what is going on? Do you need a break? Are you tired? Blah, 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 blah. So she ends up, the director says, okay, take 5, everybody take a break. Now, while everybody's leaving the set to take a break, our two paparazzi members are escorted off by their liaison there on the set. He takes them to Tara's trailer, and he tells one of them, hang out outside, like outside the trailer, and then the other one, go ahead in and find a place to hide and maybe try to get some candid pictures or whatever. What ends up happening is Arnab, our main paparazzi guy, ends up going into the trailer and hiding in the closet. Unfortunately, when Tara goes in, her manager is also with her, and he's basically admonishing her, yelling at her, do you know the steps? Are you sure you know the steps? Like, what is going on? Blah, blah, blah. And then finally he just says, okay, just take 5 minutes, get your head straight, and let's get this fucking scene shot. And he kind of storms out of the trailer. As soon as he walks out of the trailer, Tara starts crying. Arnab is in the closet. He doesn't know what to do, because obviously now that, she's been admonished and she's crying, he's not going to come out of the closet and be like, oh, hey, can I get a picture? So he's basically trying to hide back there. Unfortunately, when he turns around to see what else is in the room with him, he ends up seeing a bowl, like a glass bowl, with a human face in it. Not a head, just the face. But we're on a movie set. So instantly I thought, oh, it's a special effect or something. Like, maybe it's a mask that she has to wear later on. Haha, no, my friends. As it turns out, first, Arnab basically, when he sees the human face in the bowl, he gets scared and he trips up, obviously letting Tara know that he's hiding back there. So he comes out on his own accord and just starts apologizing. I'm so sorry. I didn't know this was your trailer. Basically lying. But then just as he's about to walk out, he asks Tara, are you okay? I heard what your manager said, and I don't think you deserve that kind of treatment. And then he starts complimenting her. He starts saying that you're a goddess. Everybody wants to be like you. You should be able to do what you want. And then she cracks a smile and says, can you repeat that? And then again, he says, you're a goddess. You should be able to do whatever the hell you want. And she says, thank you so much. But then she looks at him and says, I like your face. And instantly, any horror fan knows that's not good. When somebody just out of nowhere says, I like your face. Our boy is in some trouble. So what ends up happening is, after he tells Tara that she's a goddess and she can do whatever she wants, she's like, oh, good, I don't have to wear the face of this slave anymore. And yes, my friends, she peels her fucking beautiful face off, by the way. She's a very pretty lady. Peels her face off, exposing a fucking cybernetic android, I guess, underneath. So yeah, this thing, it's sparking. Like, all the parts where she peeled her face off are sparking. There's sparks coming off of it. So it's very obviously a android of some kind. She ends up walking out of her trailer without a face on, mind you. She has peeled her face off, exposing. She doesn't quite look like the Terminator necessarily. Like, it still looks like a skull underneath, but one of the eyes is glowing. Like it's a light up eye, very similar to like the T-1000's, red eye. So she comes out of her trailer, and the manager sees her, but he doesn't freak out right away. So it's almost like, this manager might be in on this. Maybe this manager literally bought this cyborg, or created it, or had someone create it for him to make a movie star. Or it's alien technology, which obviously, since this is a sci-fi movie, we can kind of probably lean into alien technology. But anyway, the manager starts yelling at her, telling her to go back in the trailer and that we'll take care of things, blah, blah, blah. But then she just screams at the top of her lungs, you're a slave driver, and spits acid in his fucking face. Oh, it's all the best parts of Ratma all over again from VHS 94. And yeah, literally after she spits this stuff in his face literally melts off, exposing the skull underneath, and then he just falls over dead. And then the panic starts. Everybody on the set sees this, and they are all just panicking, running for their lives. And Tara she's having fun with it. Like, she's singing, like the song that she was singing earlier in the scene that she fucked up. She's like singing it joyously. She's asking people, would you like to dance? Like, with her fucked up exposed face. Finally, she finds a generator. She finds this big generator that, if you've ever worked on a movie set, you've seen these before. It just provides power to all the equipment on the set. She ends up taking the plug out of it and literally plugging it into herself, like into the side of her body. And you could see the effect of her like sucking in the juice, sucking in the power from this generator. And then one thing that I really like about Tara is that she needs to have music playing during her massacres, because I think if I was a serial killer, I'd want music playing too. I just love music, sorry. But there's this great shot where she walks up to the DJ stand and turns the music back up, the playback for the scene that she had just shot. And then she just starts dancing and killing people, slashing them in the face. Eventually, she sucks up so much power from the generator that it's almost like a scene out of Shin Godzilla, where she lets out this big energy blast and it's literally killing everybody around her. We've got heads exploding. We've got limbs getting blown off. We've got torsos blowing up. It's fucking glorious. Excuse me. Sorry, folks. Still fighting the flu. Anyway. So after the majority of the people are dead and the lights come back up, we see that the floor is just covered with dead bodies. There's dead bodies everywhere. And the last two people left alive are Arnab, Sonu, and the director of the film, which he didn't really have that big a part. It's not the asshole that yelled at her earlier. It was just the guy that was sitting in the director's chair. Anyway, at this point, the power is out, so everybody's in the dark. But Arnab and Sonu still both have their cameras with them, so they're using their camera lights to be able to see. Eventually, they run into the director, but just as they run into the director, Tara finds them. She straddles him and pokes both of his eyes into his fucking head, just jams both of her thumbs into his skull, and then just removes her thumbs and just gets up and starts walking around again. So now at this point, there's only our two main characters left. Arnab finds Sonu in the dark, but just as he's about to approach Sonu, unfortunately, Tara gets there and just wrecks him. Actually, I think Sonu is the one that gets his eyes poked out. The director gets his innards ripped out. So that's what it is. The director gets his innards ripped out. Sonu gets his eyes poked out. And then after that, we get another great shot. This time the lights come up. Totally, the lights on set come up. And we see all the dead bodies on the ground, and there's Tara standing right in front of Arnab saying, "Would you like to dance?" But of course, Arnab is horrified. He's screaming. He's trying to get away, but he can't. Eventually, we see Tara straddle him, and you think that she's going to do the same thing, jam her thumbs into his head. Nope. She unceremoniously rips both of his arms off at the same time, which, friends, I'm like in such a happy place right now watching all this gore.
That was amazing.
Oh God, it was such a, and the way that they shot it with the camera at a 3/4 angle, and you actually see the arms get ripped off in a brightly lit scene. God, it was epic. I loved it. And then at that point, Tara basically takes one of her sharp claws, draws a line around Arnab's face, and then tears his face off, putting it on her own. Now, you would think that maybe the face would take form and actually shape onto her head, but no, it's literally just hanging there like Leatherface. And she ends up leaving the set. She walks outside. The paparazzi are all there, and they realize that it's Tara, and they're like, "Oh, Tara, can we get a smile?" The same shit that paparazzi always say. But then one of them realizes there's something wrong with her face, and yeah, she's still got Arnab's face on. And then she eventually just attacks one of the paparazzi in a POV shot. And that's the end of our segment. That's the end of Dream Girl. This one's potentially the shortest segment that we have. At least it felt the quickest. But yeah, come on in, guys. Chime in. What'd you think of Dream Girl?
Great gore again. Kind of weird setup. This is one that I didn't really think needed found footage. It just feels kind of awkwardly placed. You could have told this whole story about, just following the two of them around, but the reveal works. This whole setup actually kind of reminds me of a Futurama episode where they couldn't take pictures of the one actor because he was the time-shifting alien that couldn't be photographed.
Yep.
Yeah, it kind of reminded me of the Futurama episode, but yeah, it was still fun. Just again, didn't really need the found footage thing, but other than that, no complaints.
I hear you.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I thought once the carnage happens, this is an awesome segment. Leading up to that, I was wondering where it was gonna go, because obviously she's shooting the music videos and there's some I guess you could call it like a bit of a hostile work environment. Like she's getting overworked and her manager steps in. So I'm like, what does this have to do? Like, how are they going to turn this into something? And then, boy, oh boy, once they do, it's pretty amazing.
Damn right. Yeah. This is definitely a guilty pleasure one because it's just carnage from beginning to end. It's great. All right. So back to our wraparound. We get a little bit more. We don't get a lot of information this time around about the eldest Asian son, but we do start talking to some video experts who start talking about how they've spent their lives debunking alien videos, videos that people have shot that claim to be UFOs or aliens or Bigfoot or whatever, and that they basically have been able to debunk everything they've ever seen until we get to the end of this movie, but I'll leave it at that. So yeah, and we also get a reference to the book Communion during this segment break. Communion being, of course, considered by many people the Bible of alien abduction books. If I remember correctly, isn't Communion the basis for Fire in the Sky? Isn't Fire in the Sky based on Communion, the book?
I've heard that before. I wish I could confirm everything, but I think I've heard that pretty frequently enough to be familiar with it, but I can't 100% confirm it. I wish I knew that, but
yeah, same here. I'm not 100% sure, but I thought I remember when Fire in the Sky was new and very popular, hearing that it was based on that book. Obviously, I could be wrong, but what are you going to do?
I mean, I've heard it enough, but yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah. All right, so on to our third segment. This is the first of two segments where it doesn't make sense that they have this footage. And when we get to the end of the segment, you'll pretty much know what I'm talking about. So this one involves skydiving. Yes, our segment opens up. What was the name of this segment? Live and Let Dive is the name of this segment. This one is... Oh, what's up?
I was just going to say clever title.
Oh, absolutely. I love it. This one is written and directed by Justin Martinez. Oh, and I forgot to mention Dreamgirl was written and directed by Virat Pal, or Paul, P-A-L is the last name. So anyway, Live and Let Dive. We see a group of about a half dozen divers, skydivers. The plane is already up in the air. It turns out that this is a birthday gathering for, the main guy, the guy who we're following throughout the majority of this segment. We're following his helmet cam, I believe. And basically he's standoffish. He didn't really want to do this, but obviously he bent to peer pressure and all his friends wanted to go do it, blah, blah, blah. So they're just kind of shooting the shit back and forth. And then suddenly the plane shifts, like it hit turbulence or something. They ask the pilot, what's up? The pilot says, oh, no, that's just normal, crosswind interference, no big deal. But then suddenly one of the divers says, what the hell is that? Or actually it was the pilot who says, what the hell is that? And he points to something on the right side of the plane, and lo and behold, it's a fucking UFO. Yes, there is a big-ass, almost like an Independence Day style UFO floating in the sky, and then it just disappears. It literally just vanishes out of thin air. Everybody in the plane is kind of freaked out, but then they look again, and the UFO is now visible, and now it's even closer to their plane, so you could actually see how fucking big it is, and like I said, the fact that it kind of looks like one of those Independence Day spaceships that they used. The mothership, not the ones that came down to the planet. Anyway. So, once again, this time we see that it actually is a mothership because there's smaller ships floating around her. That they're circling her, following her, doing whatever. And then at that moment, once again, the spaceship and all of the smaller ships disappear, just bloop, just into thin air. And then we see a couple of F-16 fighters, those military jets, go right by our skydiving plane. And don't forget, a skydiving plane is just a plane. It's not a jet. So poor thing is dealing with UFOs and F-16s. And an F-16 can break the sound barrier, so you're going to get that sonic boom. I'm actually surprised that the plane didn't take any damage when those F-16s flew by so close, but again, it's a movie. Eventually, everybody's freaking out. one of the divers says, "We gotta go. We gotta dive. Just, we're not safe in this plane. We gotta dive." And then we actually see a shot through the cockpit of the plane where the spaceship literally appears right in front of the fucking plane, just out of thin air. Boom, it's there. And the plane actually crashes into the spaceship, and everybody that was in the plane falls out. The plane doesn't like explode on impact. It like breaks up into pieces. And everybody that was in the plane, luckily, has a parachute on, except our pilot. I don't think our pilot made it. But we're basically following our main character down as he's falling. And this is a tandem jump. For those who don't know, tandem skydiving is when two people are attached to one rig and one parachute. So, like, the guy, one guy is like the main diver, and the other person is just kind of there to watch and, observe, blah, blah, blah. While our main character is in midair, he's calling for his guy to open the parachute. He's like, "Dude, help me out here. Open the parachute." They're skydiving. At one point, one of the aliens falls past him, chasing one of the other divers who is not deployed his chute yet. So this alien is literally just in midair chasing these people. And then finally, our main character is able to get his chute opened. Fortunately, he opens it literally probably like 20, 30 feet away from the ground, because he literally deploys it, looks down, and there's the ground right there. He lands. How he didn't break a leg is beyond me, but again, suspension of disbelief. He lands, and he's like asking the guy that's with him, his skydiving instructor that he's connected to, "Dude, get me out of these straps. Help me out here." But at this point, the guy isn't saying anything. He's not moving. It's like, yeah, dude, this is not going to end well. Eventually, our main character gets out of his restraints and then turns around and sees one of the most epic head decapitations I've seen in fucking years. What ended up happening was, while they were still in the plane, this guy was trying to get the character to shift so that he could, he was basically complaining that one of the ropes wasn't in the right position. But because of the aliens appearing, he didn't have the chance to fix it. So what ended up happening was, when our main character deployed the chute, part of the rope was connected to the other guy's, to the skydiver's neck, literally pulling his head off, so that when they land on the ground, his head is still tangled in the ropes of the parachute, and it's separated by a good 2 feet from the rest of the body. It's such a great fucking shot. And kudos on the severed head. Like, that head looked awesome. Like, I paused it multiple times and looked at it. I'm like, that does not look like a prop. It almost looks like they decapitated somebody for the movie. But at this point, our main character realizes, he starts hearing people yelling, other divers, like other people that were on the plane with him, including his wife. Yes, his wife was on the plane with him as well. So he basically just starts going around looking for people. He ends up finding one of the girls that was on the plane. She's bleeding, but she's no broken bones, or she's still able to walk around. And she's like, she asks where Logan is, and the guy has to tell her that, yeah, he's not dead. He doesn't tell her that his head is now no longer part of his body, but yeah, he just says he's dead. And then they start hearing members of their party screaming in the distance. And throughout all of this, we're seeing quick shots of these aliens, which I don't know about you guys, but I felt like, and obviously I don't know what the layout of their home planet is, but they're like body shaped. Like, didn't that seem impractical? Like, the way that they moved, the way that their back legs were bent backwards. It just didn't seem practical to me.
It's an unusual design. I would imagine maybe being a little bit, seeing it a few more times, it'd probably grow. But it since you're saying it, yeah, it does look like an awkward thing of motion. I'm trying to remember the sequence now, but
yeah, it's basically like their front arms are, they're long and spindly, but they bend the correct way, and then their back legs are very long. Like their legs are as long as the entirety of their body, and they bend in the wrong direction. You know what I mean? They don't bend the way
yeah.
So I'm looking at it and I'm like, wow, what kind of surface, like what their home planet must has some kind of weird surface that this design works for them, like that it's more practical on their planet. Because I'm looking at them and I'm like, oh, that, I mean, if you take out one of their legs, they're probably going to be like done. Like, are they even going to be able to move? Blah, blah, blah. It's just like I said, it didn't seem ultra practical, but again, it still looks cool. Like, I'm not complaining
I think
about
that was kind of I think that was kind of my reaction. I didn't really look at how locomotion would work. I think I was just more concerned with how impressive they look, because I think these are the best looking creatures in the film.
I might go with that. Yeah. I definitely wouldn't argue it.
And backing up a little, I forgot to mention at the time, but I just love the shot when everything goes down with the plane and they're all like kind of out of the plane in the sky, and we get that shot looking up at the plane, kind of like being destroyed and breaking apart. That to me that looks scary, because that sounds like something you can almost imagine actually happening, like a plane malfunctioning in the sky, and like just that franticness of like, yeah, we were planning to skydive, but not with these conditions, and it was very unsettling.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so back down to the ground. Our main character and the first girl that he find another group of people, 2 more survivors, and then 1 more guy who literally is like, I don't think they're going to be able to save him. He literally has an iron rod. He's impaled on a piece of the plane, and it's metal. So it's literally going right through his chest. His face is torn to ribbons. Like, there's multiple deep gashes on his face. One of his arms is broken. He's spitting up blood to a incredible degree. I mean, they're trying desperately to save this guy, but it's like, no one in this group is a doctor, so even if they had a doctor there, I don't think they're saving that guy. That poor guy was just deader than shit. Eventually, our main character hears his wife yelling in the distance, and obviously that's the main person that he's concerned with, so he ends up leaving that other group, the group that he was just with, leaves and starts running towards the sound of his wife yelling. As he's running away, we see one of the aliens run by him towards the group that he just left, but I think he kind of pauses for a second, and then he starts to hear screaming. So he runs back to the group that he was with, and we see one of the aliens dragging the dead body away. Not one of the people that survived, but the guy who died right there from his injuries. Basically, they see the alien drag him away, and everybody starts running away. Just run, until eventually, again, our main character hears his wife screaming in the distance. I thought it was going to be a mimic situation where the aliens were actually mimicking voices, but no, it actually was his wife screaming. Unfortunately, when he finally finds his wife, she's kneeling on the ground and not moving. She's just kind of still, and he's walking up behind her. When he pulls her body to see her, her face has been peeled off from the middle. So you've got 2 large flaps of face skin on either side of the skull. It's pretty fucking gnarly looking. And then after that, we actually see how the aliens do that. Basically, we're down to like 2 living people left, our main character and 1 guy. They're running away, and unfortunately, one of the aliens catches up to them, drags down the other guy, not our main character. And what we actually see is very similar to like the newer Pennywise, where Pennywise could split his face open and there was like the dead lights inside. Well, the aliens do something similar, where their face opens up and there's a bright orange light inside of their head that kind of incapacitates their victim. It doesn't kill them. It just kind of, I don't know if it's like, you know, making them comatose or lobotomizing them or whatever, but it makes them docile, basically. And then we see the aliens sprout these 2 fucking, almost like Wolverine claws, but it's just 1 on each arm. So almost like swords or something, like these just long swords come out of its arms. It impales the guy, and then it literally, almost like he's electrocuting him, he hits him with a bolt of electricity, which then makes the guy's face split open. So now we actually see how his wife's body got the way it was. It's pretty fucking gnarly. So at this point, our main character is the only one left. He's running away. Eventually, he finds a road, and there's somebody in a pickup truck driving, conveniently at that exact moment as he gets to the road. He flags the guy down and then just jumps into the guy's truck, not the back, but into the cab in the passenger seat. The guy, who's an older gentleman, freaks out, starts thinking that he's being carjacked, so he actually pulls out a gun, points it at our main character, and basically says, "You got 3 seconds to get out of my car or I'm going to fucking shoot you." Our main character is basically screaming at the guy, "I'm not messing with you. Something killed all my friends. It killed my wife. Sir, I swear on everything that I am not messing with you." Obviously, the guy doesn't believe him, even though at this point, our main character's got to be covered in blood and disheveled and everything else. I mean, he fell out of an airplane, for God's sakes, but the old guy just doesn't care. So literally, he starts a countdown, a 1, 2, 3 countdown. But when he gets to 3, we see an alien grab him from behind. He shoots the gun and blows off 2 of our main character's fingers on his right hand. And it looks awesome the way that they're just hanging there. It's like the glove is the only thing keeping the 2 fingers connected to his hand. He's wearing gloves. It looks fucking great. But at this point, one of the aliens actually gets into the truck cab with him, and actually literally comes face to face with him, and he's right there in front of the camera, and he opens up his face, to do the orange light. But this time, the alien just disappears. He doesn't kill our main character. He does the orange light, and then when our main character comes to, the aliens are gone, the old man is gone, like everybody's gone. But he's, to his credit, he doesn't hesitate. He's like, fuck it, I'm out of here. He gets in the driver's seat of the truck, starts it up with his fucked up right hand with 2 fingers hanging off of it. Basically his pinky and his index finger are just hanging off the side of his head. The side of his hand, pretty much being held together just by the glove. He turns on the truck, he floors it. But the truck doesn't move. And he looks behind him and he sees that the truck is kicking up dirt. So, it's working. It's almost like the truck is stuck or something. So then he slaps it into reverse, does the same thing, floors it, but the truck won't move. Suddenly, then he goes to put the truck back in drive to try to, again, drive forward. But when he looks over to his right, everything in the truck is floating. There's a can of soda, there's like a knife, a newspaper, and literally everything is floating. And suddenly he looks out of the car and realizes he's not on the ground. The car is actually being dragged, and everything. It's not just the car. It looks like even rocks and dirt that were on the ground are literally being sucked up into this alien ship. And we actually... The last couple of images that we see is our main character still in the cab of the pickup truck as it's being dragged into the ship with like a tractor beam type thing, because we can hear the main character start to have trouble breathing. So you could tell that they're starting to hit the atmosphere. He's way up there. He's having trouble breathing, but then he sees the ship. The door of the ship opens and it starts to drag the truck in, and then fade to black, and that's the end of our segment. So again, what did we think? This is the one that I'm probably the lowest on, not because it's not good. I still really like this segment. It felt like there was more story to tell. Like it was, and again, it's an anthology, so these are short segments. It's not like we're going to get backstory or, any kind of epitaph type thing. But I don't know. What'd you guys feel about this segment?
Yeah, probably my least, if we're not including the wraparounds.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, great design of the aliens. Again, we discussed the issues with that already. Love the gore, love the setup, but again, this is the other one that I was kind of thinking doesn't really need the found footage thing. I mean, you can include parts of it because, they're skydiving, so they're going to record it, but I think once the plane crash, I don't think once that happens, I don't think you can really justify it as much. I mean, I think you said as well that this was one that kind of broke the found footage rules about how it got recovered. Yeah. So yeah, I'm definitely right there with you on that.
Exactly. I mean, because most of this footage is recorded on his helmet cam, and it's not like his helmet falls off back down to the ground. Literally, the last image we see is the truck being pulled into the fucking. So unless the aliens like spit out the truck and just wanted the guy inside, it doesn't really make sense how they were able to recover that footage. But again, I'll suspend disbelief. Mike, anything you want to say about the segment?
I was thinking the same thing as far as like that's kind of the only way, unless the GoPro like whatchamacallit, like live stream to like a cloud or something and they recovered the footage that way. But overall I like the setup. I liked the fact that like they're up in a plane and holy shit there's a UFO, and I thought the gore was cool. I thought the alien was an interesting design. One of the things that always I think is tough for I wouldn't say sci-fi because not all sci-fi has to do with aliens, but like for sci-fi dealing with aliens, there's so many times where like it's a good story, good setup, and then you once they actually reveal aliens in it, it's like kind of underwhelming. So it's always tough. But I thought for the most part, this segment and just the movie overall does a good job with the designs that we get. This thing is weird looking, but it is scary, and more so than just the design, what it actually does to people is like pretty freaking cool.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying just because you stick an alien in something doesn't necessarily make it strictly sci-fi. Like this movie is still solidly horror. This segment's very similar to A Quiet Place. You know, we get aliens that land on the planet, pretty much just take out everybody that they run into. But just like with A Quiet Place, like to me, A Quiet Place is not sci-fi. It takes place on Earth. Yes, the aliens come here and decimate the human race, but to me, that's still solidly a horror film with sci-fi elements to it. So, again, my opinion, no one else's. So, what are you going to do? All right, so back to the wraparound. We get a little bit more on the Asian son, as it turns out. Well, we already talked about the fact that he created these two tapes simultaneously. At this point, we start to see how the video experts, the two guys that are supposedly video experts, how they start talking about how every footage that they've ever seen can be debunked, but that this one, it's creepy. Like there's something about it that freaks them out. And one of the experts even says, even if this video is fake, it's still unsettling. And that's fairly valid, but we're not going to see it yet. We're not going to see it until after our final segment. And that is right now, our fifth and final true segment of the anthology. Oh, wait, no. I'm sorry.
No.
Our fourth segment. Yeah, you're right. You're right. I totally skipped one. I skipped my favorite of all things. So yeah, our fourth segment of the movie is called Fur Babies. And this one is written and directed by Christian and Justin Long. Yes, that Justin Long, most recently in Barbarian. The guy who's just does a superb job of playing an absolute douchebag in every horror movie he's in. So kudos to him. And that includes Tusk, which we'll get into in a little bit. So yeah, this one, like I said, it's called Fur Babies. The segment opens up with a commercial. Like one of those local cable commercials, and it shows our main character, the woman who runs, what was it called again? Doggy Dream House, and it's basically a boarding house for dogs. And she advertises it as, you know, drop off your dogs, I'll take care of them. You know, I feed them all natural food. You know, they have play areas. If any of them are bad, we actually even have like discipline areas, you know, where they can be separated, you know, blah, blah, blah. So when the commercial ends, we see the camera pan back and we see that it's a group of social justice warriors called Humans Against Animal Cruelty. Now, this kind of weirds me out, but basically, they think that this woman is doing something cruel because she has 3 stuffed dogs on her mantle. Like, it's almost like these people never heard of taxidermy before, you know? But for whatever reason, they literally think that this woman is, and they even say mutilating dogs. It's like, no, it's taxidermy, my friend. That's not mutilation. Like I said, the stupidity of these social justice warriors, which I'm sure was intentional by, Justin and Christian Long, but goddamn, like I just don't see where they go from seeing 3 stuffed dogs on a mantle to she's mutilating animals. Like, where's the connective tissue there? But again, it's an anthology segment, so we got to get moving with the story. What they end up doing is they end up sending 2 of their members to the Doggy Dream House under the guise of them wanting to board their dog at this place. But they also have a hidden camera inside of the little carrier that they have their dog in. They actually do have a little dog with them, and there's a camera hidden in the carrier. So when they go into the house, they go through the normal spiel that she, her marketing stuff of everything that she provides, everything that she does. Then eventually one of the guys, it's a guy and a girl. The guy, I think his name was Stuart, basically asks, so why don't you bury the dogs? And she says, well, I do bury most of my dogs, but the ones that are really special to me, I can't bring myself to bury them. So, I have them stuffed and mounted here in my house. And then the guy says, oh, since you don't want to part with them, that gives you the right to mutilate them? Like, just out of nowhere, he just fucking starts accusing her of shit. And she handles it well, I will say. Like, the girl that's with Stuart, tells him to shut up. But she, the lady is like, oh, it's okay. Everyone has their opinion, and you're all entitled to your opinion, blah, blah, blah. But then she notices that she called him Stuart and not Tom or Ted, whatever fake name they were using. So already, these 2 are just terrible spies. They're just the worst fucking spies. They find out that she basically lives there alone, except for her brother, who is a mute. Doesn't make any noise. He's a big, burly fucking guy, definitely scary looking, but he doesn't say anything, and he just kind of sits at a chair. So, no one feels threatened right away. But then eventually, the owner of the business, the lady, she starts taking them down to the basement, and she starts showing them things that I'm pretty sure she would normally not show a prospective client, because she shows them the disciplinary room where she puts dogs that are being naughty. And then she shows them like her quote unquote craft space, which is where she does her taxidermy. You could see like there's pictures of the taxidermy instructions and things like that at the table. And then the last room that she shows them, she says, this is where I put the really, really bad cases. And then she turns around and goes, like 2 people sneaking into someone's house and trying to get personal information. Instantly, Stuart and the girl are like, oh, no, I'm sorry, you misunderstood what we were doing. What they didn't notice is that our crazy lady saw the camera inside of the pet carrier, but didn't say anything. She didn't say anything to the 2 spies. She literally looks directly into the camera. Now, here's a question that I have, and obviously this might have to do more with the time period. We don't really get specific time periods for these segments. Do they take place in the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s? Like, there's no cell phones in the movie, so it's hard to say that it's modern day. But at the same time, the internet exists, and they've got computers, blah blah blah. So is it the 90s? Is it the 2000s? I don't know. But the point is, it bothers me that they send these 2 spies into this place with a camera, and the camera is not broadcasting somewhere live where people can watch it. It's literally just recording locally on the unit itself. And I'm thinking to myself, how does that fucking make sense? You're literally sending 2 of your own people into what you think might be a dangerous situation, but you don't watch the footage live? Like, I feel like this segment would have been so much shorter if somebody was monitoring that footage as it was filming, because then they would have seen exactly what happens next. Because what happens next is our mute brother, we see him run towards Stuart with a rag in his hand. Obviously, it's got some chloroform on it, so he basically knocks out him. Then we see the girl run off screen, and we hear the brother, kind of chase her. And then the scene fades to black. it fades to black after she goes and grabs the dog. The dog, they actually did bring a dog with them. I don't think any of them actually owned the dog. I think it was just like a stunt dog. But they named it Pickles, which made me smile instantly, because if you know the show Pickles from Adult Swim, that dog was basically a Satanist. But not that it had anything to do with the pickles in this movie. I just thought it was a nice little reference to see a dog named Pickles. So I liked it. So anyway, after the camera, so like I said, the scene fades to black. And then when it comes back up, she's speaking into the camera directly herself. And not her camera, because the camera that her brother was holding was a VHS grainy looking thing. She's actually doing commentary into the camera that they brought with them, which I thought was fucking hysterical. And she starts talking about the changes that she's going to do. And, oh, by the way, too, before our two spies were attacked, we do see a human inside of a cage, inside of one of the kennels. She exposes one of the kennels, and we see that it's a guy in there. It's a human, but she's forcing him to act like a dog. Like, he tries to speak, and she, like, hits him. Like, no, bark. You're a dog. You bark. You don't speak. And, you know, so blah, blah, blah. So we're kind of starting to get an idea of what exactly is happening. So like I said, when the scene comes back up, she's talking into the camera, and she's talking about the changes that she's going to do to these people. She shows Stuart's hand, and she literally converted one of his hands into a paw. She ties down the fingers so that they're stuck in a fist position. She added claws to the hand, and then even added pads, you know, those soft pads that the dogs walk on. So, and she even says, I put these pads on here so that he can walk on his hands and legs now without any discomfort. And then we start to hear the girl whimpering in a cage next to them, in a kennel right next to them. So she ends up grabbing the camera. Our crazy lady grabs the camera, points it towards the girl in the cage, and we now see that she's been partially shaved. Her head has been partially shaved, and she has a bone jaw attached to her face, like an additional jaw attached to her jaw. And it's a dog jaw, obviously. So at this point, we figure out that, yes, this woman is basically taking all these people that she doesn't like and turning them into dogs, which is pretty fucking insane. But yeah, this is why Mike and I were talking about Tusk. I mean, this is very similar to Tusk, with Michael Parks turning Justin Long into a walrus. And isn't it funny that Justin Long is wrote and directed this segment with his brother after being in Tusk? So I wonder if Tusk maybe was actually an inspiration for this. I'd have to actually, I didn't pop into my head until literally this second. So who knows? Next time I talk to Kevin Smith, I'll ask him if he knows anything about VHS Beyond. Anyway. So like I said, we see that the girl has a jaw attached to her human jaw, and she's in a kennel locked up. But then suddenly the rest of Humans Against Animal Cruelty show up at the house. They've actually been calling and leaving messages, believe it or not, leaving voicemails with Doggy Dreamhouse, basically saying, I've been trying to call you. I'm trying to find my two members that visited you, however long ago. I don't want to get the police involved, but if you don't call me back, I have no choice. Now, obviously, the woman hears these messages and doesn't care. She doesn't even react. But what ends up happening is, as she's talking into the camera and showing us the work that she's doing on the two spies, she sees on the security camera that her friends have just shown up, the rest of Humans Against Animal Cruelty. And the main guy is such a fucking douchebag. Like I think he pictures himself as like an action movie star. Like, to the point where when he broke through the front door, he actually said, that was fucking epic. Did you get that on camera? Like, he's so enamored with himself for breaking down a door. But then, of course, as they're looking around the house, they hear their female friend whimpering in the basement. So they're like, oh, shit, we got to go down there. They all go down there. I think there's like 4 of them at this point. They all go down there. And when they get down there, they see the brother in the corner filming them like with a camera, and they also have a camera with them. Obviously, the new group of people that showed up, they have an additional camera with them. The brother, the crazy brother has his own camera. When they notice that the crazy brother is standing there filming them, they almost don't react. Like they're almost like in shock. Like, what do we do? Here, this big, scary fucking guy holding a camera is recording us. But then at that moment, they hear their friend, the girl, whimpering in the cage. They walk over to the cage and they realize that something has been done to her. The jaw has been attached, her head's been partially shaved. But then our crazy lady shows up and she's like, "Oh, how are you?" She's almost polite. She's like the most polite crazy person I've ever seen. And basically they start to ask, "What are you doing to them?" And she's like, "Well, I'm making them into almost like the substance, a better version of themselves." I don't know if she uses those exact words, but it just popped into my head. Like I said, she's turning these people who she doesn't like. She thinks that they're rude, entitled people, and she's making them into dogs. And this is where we finally get to see some of her completed work. She actually opens up the very far back room and actually whistles and calls out for two dogs to come out. And when they come out, yep, they are fucking humans, completely covered in dog fur with jaws, dog jaws and snouts attached to their faces, claws attached to their hands. And they've literally been so indoctrinated that they literally think they're dogs. Like they're not speaking anymore. And when they come out and we first see them, the big one kind of looks like a werewolf. He kind of looks like an 80s werewolf. And then the small one, I don't know. He kind of just looks like a weird, creepy little guy. Like I feel like the small one hasn't been a dog as long because he walks on his hind legs more than the big one, whereas the big one is on all fours at all time. So they literally, and then finally she just says, "Sick 'em." And the two man dogs attack the other members. One of them slashes the main douchebag's face with his claws, pretty much decimating him instantly. We see the little one attack the girl and just start scratching at her midsection. And literally blood and entrails start coming out, but it's still scratching at her, almost like he's having fun, like he's playing with her. And then, like I said, the other... all the members of the group have now been dispatched by these two man dogs. And we see the crazy woman give the two man dogs a treat and say, good boy, you protected mommy. Here's a treat. And then this segment does something that the Ratma segment did in VHS 94, whereas the Ratma segment in VHS 94 could have ended with the ritual in the sewer, but then they added that extra scene live on TV where she spits acid in the guy's face. This segment does the same thing. They literally could have ended the segment after she said "good boy" to the two dogs and they killed the rest of the intruders. But they add an extra segment where it's actually kind of a guilty pleasure because I fucking hate porch pirates. But we actually see a porch pirate walk up to the woman's porch to steal some packages that have been left there. But the dog, the smaller dog, is walking around the house free and clear, like he's not chained up or anything. And then when he realizes that there's somebody in the front porch, he literally runs through the human-sized doggy door. Yes, there's a doggy door here, but it's big enough to fit a human, which for obvious reasons, you kind of have to have that. So literally as the porch pirate is walking away with the packages, the dog leaps through the doggy door and just starts fucking this guy up, biting chunks of his neck out, sinew and muscle and all sorts of tissue and ligaments. And it's just tearing at his throat. And then finally, the camera angle, like the VHS. Oh, and the reason that we're seeing this is because the dog has a camera on its collar. I forgot to explain that. After she turns these people into man dogs, she puts a camera on their collar so that she can watch everything that they do. So pretty impressive. Like I said, I really, really like this segment because it's the quirkiest of the bunch. It has the funniest antagonist. I think this lady is fucking hysterical. She's so polite. You know, she's like the Annie Wilkes of the VHS franchise. You know, she's a polite serial killer. I fucking love her. I thought she was awesome. What'd you guys think of Fur Babies?
Decent enough. Oh, go ahead,
oh.
Mike. I mean, I've kind of been going first for most of them anyway.
I'm just gonna say I think it was really absurdist fun. Like once you kind of realize what's going on, and I think what made it over the top and or what put it over the top for me was we actually get like animal attacks in like the finalized form of them being fused, because we were comparing it to Tusk, and like Tusk kind of ends with him turned into the walrus, but this one, like, not only do we get to see them in like their dog form, but we actually get to see the dogs do some vicious attacks, and that was pretty crazy. That kind of took it over the top for me, and it was a lot of fun.
Don?
I mean, I was actually gonna say pretty similar. Yeah, I love her. I think she's a lot of fun. Probably could be a little bit longer. I don't know if this would be like a full-length segment, but I definitely want to see a little bit more what goes on. You know, maybe see like, you know, her taking the two you know, earlier guard dogs that she, you know, comes off with. You know, it's like training regiments and you know, like the surgery scenes and stuff like that. That probably could be a little bit more fun. Yeah, I don't have much else to add.
The last question I have about this segment: do you guys think that Doggy Dreamhouse is a real business, or is this just a way for her to get people in her house to turn them into dogs? Because as she was giving the tour, she only had one dog with her, and I'm like, this is a boarding house that only has one dog staying here. Now, admittedly, when they get downstairs, we see a few more dogs that are like, you know, in the discipline area, if you will. But I don't know. Do you guys think this is a real business, or is she just killing everybody who walks through the door?
I was figuring everybody that walks through the door.
I love it. Like I said, I absolutely love this lady. She made me laugh multiple times. Just her reactions, her very matter-of-fact reactions, like, oh, your friends are here. Like, no worry whatsoever that there's 4 people with weapons at her front door. She's just like, oh, your friends are here. I just loved her. All right, so we get back to the wraparound. In this part of the wraparound, we start talking about, they actually bring up Orson Welles and the War of the Worlds, and they start talking about how, you know, this footage isn't meant to create skeptics. It's meant to create believers. Like when people share alien footage, it's not so that they could get, you know, made fun of or debunked or everything like that. It's like they're trying to share it in the sense of, you know, they're not trying to fool people. They're trying to get people to believe what they believe. And then that's when they bring up Orson Welles and the War of the Worlds. It's like Orson Welles wasn't trying to trick us into thinking there was an alien invasion. He was just trying to open our eyes at the possibility of an alien invasion. And I kind of like the way they looked at it. I don't really hear people talk about War of the Worlds that way. And a silly little horror movie actually put some good science on War of the Worlds, so I kind of dug that. And then it is our final true segment of the movie, and this is our longest segment of the movie. Like I said, it clocks in at almost a half hour, right around 29 minutes. And this is the one written by Mike Flanagan and directed by Katie Siegel. So we've got a lot of horror cred here. You know, well, they're married, aren't they? Aren't Flanagan and Siegel married?
I always assumed so.
Yeah. I don't know if I heard that somewhere.
I don't know if it's official or not. I mean, and it could be a Goldie Hawn, Kurt Russell thing, but I always assumed they were. So I mean, either or.
Well, they're together anyway, so let's just go with that. But yeah, so yeah, I mean, obviously, when you see those names during the opening, it's like, ooh, okay, this could be something. Now, admittedly, this is the most sci-fi of all the segments. There's still some horror in here. There's still a lot of horror in here, but it's the most sci-fi. And this segment opens up with a lone girl, just a blonde girl. This is the segment that Mike was talking about earlier, that it's basically one person throughout the majority of this segment. And she's basically in the Arizona desert, and she brings up the Phoenix Lights. They don't say the Phoenix Lights in specific words, but they bring up how back in the 90s people saw a set of glowing lights in the sky, blah blah blah. And then she's talking about how a couple of days earlier the lights reappeared. People are now seeing the lights in the sky again, and that they always have the same formation. It'll be 6 lights in the sky, and then one of them will break off from the pack and actually land. She speaks to a couple of the locals, a couple of the yokels, if you will, basically asking them, have you seen anything? What have you seen? Blah blah blah. She talks to a couple of people that she doesn't really get much information out of them. The first guy's just kind of an idiot, doesn't really know what he's talking about, like keeps correcting himself. And then the second guy that she speaks to talks about a friend of his that actually saw aliens and saw little gray men basically walking away from one of these little like UFOs that landed. The interviewer, the girl, then asks the guy, really? He saw this with his own eyes? And then the guy's like, well, he saw it in a vision. And I'm like, why the fuck would you even bring that up? You saw it in a vision. What the hell? So yeah, so this girl's getting nothing from the locals. So she basically just decides to she ends up setting up 6 different campsites throughout this particular part of the desert. And she basically says that all 6 campsites they're located at a spot where lights were witnessed by somebody. So she's going about her video, doing her, little interviews. The one thing that really irks me about this segment is that this is the lowest quality of any segment in this movie. Like, this is the one that literally looks like it was shot on old VHS, and it's in black and white too. It's not in color. So this is the segment that you're going to be struggling the most to see what the fuck is on screen. I'm not going to say that it gets annoying or anything. I'm just saying, after watching the first 2 segments in beautiful 4K and clarity and daylight and everything, suddenly we're watching this VHS segment that's shot poorly with very little lighting. It's it's almost distracting, but not too much. So again, this girl's doing her little host segment, and then suddenly she sees lights in the sky, and she points the camera, and yes, we see the 6 lights in the sky that everybody's been talking about. And she's like, oh my God, I got it. And she's got the camera pointed at it, and then we see exactly what everybody else described. One of the lights breaks off from the group and then lands somewhere in the local area. She decides to jump in her car and try to find where it landed. She ends up stopping her car in the general area of where the thing landed, and she starts looking around. Suddenly, she sees a light in the distance, a single light in the distance, and she's like, oh, could that be them? It's not moving, so maybe it's them. So she starts walking towards it. After a while, she starts to realize that the light is just the reflection of the light on her camera on a surface somewhere. So it's not like the light is emanating from the distance. It's emanating from her camera and being reflected off of something in the distance. When she finally gets to it, it's pretty gnarly looking. It looks organic. Like it looks fleshy on the outside. It's got like, it almost looks like it's shiny, like it's covered in slime. It looks like there's like something wriggling underneath the surface, almost like worms or something. I don't know. It just looks really weird. It doesn't look like a spaceship, but apparently it's something. So she's filming, she's talking about it, she goes to touch it, and then suddenly it opens. And it's not like a door that opens. It's literally like the flesh splits apart, and you can actually hear the sound effects of it, kind of, the splurging sound. I don't know how to describe it, but basically, the flesh kind of separating. And she doesn't even hesitate. She walks right in. I'm thinking, damn, at least a normal person would at least take a second and think, should I be doing this? Should I be walking into what is potentially an alien spacecraft? But like I said, without hesitation, she does it. She walks in. And instantly she sees this room that looks like something out of Alien. You know how the alien, the xenomorphs, would terraform any area that they started to dwell in, that's what the inside of the spaceship looks like. It looks like it was terraformed, and it's like fleshy. It actually looks, she even says that it looks like an exoskeleton. And then in between each segment of the exoskeleton, there's like this string or like metallic line that's like going from the ceiling to the ground in between each of the segments on the wall. She's like, oh, I wonder what that is. Is that like a membrane or something? So she goes and she touches it very gently with her finger. But when she touches it, it makes the loudest fucking noise, almost like an alarm went off. But it's not an alarm. I don't know. They don't really explain it. But basically, when you touch this string, it just creates this loud, almost alarm sound. And it instantly cuts her. The string is so sharp that just touching it is going to break your skin. She looks at her finger, realizes that she's bleeding. But then as she realizes that she's bleeding, she sees something start to fall from the ceiling. It almost looks like spores or something, like something bad. And she starts to run away. But obviously she's in a room that no longer has a door to get in or out. So she falls to the ground and she sticks her hand out like to protect herself, the hand that has the cut on it. And then what we see is the spores actually surround her finger and they heal her cut. So obviously these are like nanites, nanobots, something very Jason X, if you will. If you remember the nanobots that created Jason in that movie, very similar to that. The problem is that it doesn't heal her perfectly. Like you could see there's something on her skin that doesn't look human. It almost looks scaly. But we'll leave that alone for now. So eventually she starts to hear something walking, a creature walking inside of the ship. So she goes to hide, and then she sees an alien. She actually sees, we don't get to see it very well. So, this could be a gray alien for all I know. But again, black and white VHS footage, not a lot of lighting. It's kind of up to your interpretation as to what you're looking at. She sees the alien. The alien walks into a room, opens a drawer, pulls something out of the drawer, and then leaves the room. That's literally all we see. And then she comes out. After the alien is left, she then comes out of her hiding spot and starts looking around some more, realizes that there are these pods in, not eggs, but like cages, almost like aquariums, like these little encased areas. And she looks at one of them and she's like, oh, that looks like an octopus. Now, I am a big fan of arachnids. So as soon as she says, oh, that looks like an octopus, I'm like, you dumb bitch, that's a spider. That's very obviously a giant spider, but it's not moving or anything. So, and she obviously doesn't know the animal kingdom very well. So she says octopus, but then she pans the camera up to the next enclosure above that one. And then we actually do see a spider, just a traditional desert spider that you would see in, California, Arizona, whatever the case may be. Like nothing special about it, nothing alien, literally just a spider. At this point, she realizes that the door is gone. The opening that she came in is gone. The wall closed behind her. So she can't get out. So she starts to think, maybe if I hit, the string again, honestly, I don't know what the fuck she was thinking, but for some reason, she decides to hit the string again, which of course, once again, creates that loud ass sound. It sounds like an alarm. And then she looks down at her finger and it's bleeding again. This time, the nanobots come out and she allows them to heal her. But when they're done, she looks at her hand and she realizes that she's got a claw at the end of her finger. Not a human fingernail, an actual claw. And then she mentions reptiles. She's like, oh, these nanobots must not know human physiology. They must be more familiar with reptile physiology, because it looks like she's got scales on her. On both spots where she cut herself, it looks like there's scales there now. And then, like I said, on the second cut, she's got a fucking claw at the end of her finger. So after this, suddenly all the lights in the room start to light up and they start pulsating in a rhythmic fashion. And we as the viewer start to realize that it's a countdown. There's a countdown going on. And then suddenly the entire place that she's in starts rumbling. And we actually see her like the G-force. Basically what's happening is the ship is taking off with her in it. But it's taking off so fast that the G-force knocks her out and actually breaks her arm. She actually breaks her arm in multiple places as this ship is taking off. Again, the camera goes black, and when the camera fades back in, we can hear the nanites, or the nanobots. We can actually hear them repairing her, fixing her. And she's like, and then she looks at her arm, and her arm is all like, it still looks damaged. I mean, it's workable. Like, it's not broken anymore. She can use it, but there's like some weird scarring all over it. It doesn't look right. And she's like, oh, the nanobots did the best they could with my arm, I guess, whatever. And then she looks out the window and she sees the Earth in the distance. And it's actually not a bad little shot, despite this being VHS and black and white. It's not a bad little shot of the Earth from the distance that she sees. Then she starts to hear the ship make noises again, and she starts to see the stars outside of the window turn into that straight line, which of course to most of us indicates the ship is going into hyperspace. Well, unfortunately, everything in the ship is in stasis. The aliens, the spiders that they've collected, I'm assuming that must be their mission, that they're harvesting. I don't know if it's spiders specifically or just any Earth creatures, but because they keep landing in the desert, spiders is what's the most abundant. So it seems like they're harvesting spiders. Now, after the ship goes into hyperspace, we hear her body get tossed around, and we hear that familiar sound of those strings getting hit. So I'm thinking she must have gotten like cut in half or lost her head or something. Because then eventually when the camera fades back up, again, we can hear the sound effects of the nanites repairing her. But this time she comes up to the camera and we see that her face is mutated. We see that one side of her mouth is extended all the way to her ear. So you could see just a bunch of mutant teeth. Very similar to Slither, if you will. If you remember Michael Rooker's character in Slither during his transition, how his mouth kind of split open, that's kind of what she looked like. And at this point, she starts going hysterical because she starts laughing at the camera and saying, so where are we going? And she's, like I said, she's got this shit-eating grin on her face, and she's just laughing her ass off. Finally, the ship once again goes into hyperspace. We hear her body get thrown around again, but this time when the camera fades back in, there's blood floating all over the place. But we still see the nanites collecting up all the blood and repairing her. We don't see her very well at this point, but we hear her say in a very mutated voice, please stop, no more, no more. And then again, she injures herself. She breaks something because we hear a snap, and then we see blood shoot up. Once again, we see the nanites come out, and then that's when we see her face. And my friends, she's a fucking giant spider. Yes, these nanobots, I'm assuming, are programmed to protect the spiders that they're harvesting in the ship. So I'm assuming that the nanobots are only familiar with spider physiology. So when it connected with her, it starts basically every time it repaired her, it turned her a little bit more into a spider until that final shot where she's got that traditional giant spider head with all the eyes, the 8 eyes, the 2 rows of 4 eyes. It just is pretty fucking gnarly. And then the segment ends with just a shot of the ship approaching a planet that's not ours, a planet that doesn't look familiar to us. And that's the end of our segment. I went through it quick. Like I said, it's a solid half-hour segment. So I skipped a lot of like the little in-between stuff that she does, but I got through the gist of it. So yeah, this fucking the nanobots on this ship are slowly turning her into a giant fucking spider, which yeah, I fucking loved. All right, come in here, guys. What'd you think of this one?
I enjoy the idea behind it. A bit too sci-fi for my taste, but
Yeah.
the ideas are all right. I mean, I probably wouldn't have been that upset about it if I was tricked into watching this with you know, they said this was a horror film and I ended up getting something like this. I probably wouldn't have been too mad about it, but I ultimately would have come down on it a lot harder just because it's a sci-fi film masquerading as horror.
Mhm.
It's kind of hard to explain just because once I figured out that it was the most sci-fi of it, it kind of lowered my thoughts on it. So yeah, it's not bad for what it is. It's just not for me.
Yeah. And then, of course, this is the second segment that doesn't make sense how they got the footage. I mean,
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, she's literally recording on a VHS camcorder, yet somehow we're watching this footage after she was taken to an alien planet and turned into a spider.
The last scene is, them arriving on a distant planet. How the hell does that get back to Earth?
Exactly. I mean, we got to figure that the ship will probably go back to Earth, to harvest more spiders or whatever it's harvesting. But yeah, I don't know. Unless the aliens found the camera and just threw it out of the ship somewhere in the desert, it just doesn't make sense that they recovered this footage. Mike, get in here. What'd you think of Stowaway?
I'm a fan of it. I thought, like I was saying during general thoughts, I thought it was a little slow paced to be like the last major portion of the movie. But as standing on its own, I still enjoyed it. I still liked the conclusion of it. I still thought it was kind of unsettling and creepy, especially once we found out what was going on and the kind of the final form of this thing going on. Like I said, the only thing I would have changed is I might have stuck it like somewhere different in the placement. But other than that, I enjoyed it.
Yeah. I actually like this one. I think I'm going to be the highest on this segment. I admit, I agree with Mike that it's a little bit slower at the beginning, when it's doing the documentary style stuff. But I feel like once she gets on the ship, the tension is there throughout the entirety of the rest of the segment. And that tension kind of got me through it. You know what I mean? Like, rather than being bored because we're not seeing any creatures, we barely see an alien in this segment. Like I said, we see a very blurry, out of focus alien, but the tension was enough for me. Like, once she's on that ship and the fucking ship looks alive, it looks organic, and the fucking thing takes off, I wasn't like, how can I put it? I didn't feel like it was slow anymore. Admittedly, a long segment. It's the longest segment of the movie. As far as its placement, that's a tough one because I feel like since this one is solidly the most sci-fi of all of them, I feel like no matter where you put it, it's gonna be, maligned a little bit. People aren't gonna dig it. I'm thinking the reason it's the final segment is because of the horror legacy behind it. The fact that it's, Flanagan and Katie Siegel. I mean, they're probably the two biggest names in this whole movie. Run up and down the list of stars and directors and writers. Those are the two biggest names to horror fans like us. So I think, I don't know if it was maybe the producers doing, Flanagan and Siegel a favor. Siegel, excuse me, not Seagal. But yeah, that's the only justification I could find, is that because it's kind of like if Carpenter did a segment in a horror anthology, they'd probably make it last because it's Carpenter. You know what I mean? So that's the only justification I could think of.
Yeah.
Makes sense. And I forgot to mention too that the name of the wraparound is Abduction Adduction. Abduction, ABD / adduction, ADD. And for those who don't know what that is, it's basically just has to do with how we move our joints. Where is it here? Here it is. Abduction refers to moving a limb away from the midline of the body. So that's basically how our limbs move. When we bend our arms, our elbows are farther away from our body. And when we bend our knees are farther away from our body. Now, adduction is the opposite. It's the movement of a joint towards the inner part of the midline. So imagine your elbows and your knees bending in the other direction. That's adduction. So I'm assuming because most of the aliens that we saw in this movie have that, their limbs bend in a different direction. I guess that's why they called it the wraparound, abduction, adduction. So there you go, a little bit of trivia for you guys. But there's still one more thing to go over, and that is, of course, the end of our wraparound. So after our final segment, we go back to our wraparound, and we actually watch our video experts and our documentary hosts watch the video, the Proof 1 and Proof 2 video that the Asian guy recorded. And we see that basically it's like a reaction video. We see their reactions where they're like, oh, what the fuck is that? Oh, God, is that an egg? They're just reacting to it. And then finally, we get to see it. So the final thing in the movie is literally a message pops up and says, the final segment is presented without commentary, and we do not vouch for the authenticity of this video. And this is when we finally get to see it. And what happens is the Asian gentleman sets up two cameras. One is a GoPro on his head, so it's like a head camera, and then he has a static camera on the side of his bed in his bedroom. But what the filmmakers did is they edited these two together. So what we see is when the video starts, we see the guy in bed asleep with his TV still on, but we see a dark image in the background, like a shadow person. Suddenly we see bright red lights from outside the window, like illuminate the entire room. And then we realize that the shape is inside the room. Like at first, it almost looks like it's outside the window. And then when the bright red light shines, we see that it's in the room with them. And man, my friends, this thing is fucking awesome looking. It is not a traditional gray alien. This thing is actually very, very humanoid. But with the only difference, he has another set of eyes. I call him four eyes, jokingly, but he literally has a set of eyes and then another set of eyes about an inch above that. So, and the smile, the fucking smile that this alien has on his face is fucking so unsettling. Like, but basically what we're looking at is the alien walks up to the guy as he's sleeping, sticks its hand in its throat and starts pulling something out. We start to see like a string or a wire getting pulled out of the mouth. And then every few inches on the wire, there's something that looks like a little tiny egg, like a pod or an egg or just something like that. And it's literally every couple of inches on this string. Finally, when the alien is done pulling all of these whatever out of this guy's body, the alien picks up the camera, actually picks up the guy's camera, points it at the guy, and the guy is awake. The guy's awake, but he's like comatose, like he's not moving. And then somehow, and this is again where suspension of disbelief kind of plays a role, we actually see the camera go into the guy's mouth. Now, these are VHS camcorders, guys. These are big fucking cameras. There's no way they're going to fit in somebody's mouth. But again, I'll allow it. We see the alien pick up the camera and then jam it down the guy's throat until we can see his uvula. And the uvula is that little piece of skin that separates your windpipe from your esophagus. It prevents you from choking, basically. We actually see it pulsating, and then suddenly it opens and it lets out this fucking terrifying howl that sounds very similar to some of the aliens that we heard both in this movie and even in other movies. I remember what was that kids movie last year with the aliens? Kids versus Aliens, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. The aliens in that movie made kind of the same howl that this guy makes. And basically,
speaking of that movie, can you believe that was Moods' #1 of the year?
I will never ever understand that in a million years. I mean, I didn't hate the movie, but #1, holy shit. I just can't agree with it. But again, to each his own. All opinions are valid. But yeah, basically after the uvula opens up and we hear that blood-curdling scream, movie fades to black, and that's it, my friends. That is VHS Beyond. Good times.
What's the next one gonna be? VHS what?
I don't know, man. They gave up on the number. I mean, they literally only gave us one numbered VHS movie. That was VHS 2.
VHS Deep Sea or something.
Ooh. Yeah, I can see that.
VHS The Abyss.
VHS spelunking. They're all cave stories. I don't know. But like I said, I'm very happy that the VHS franchise has kind of righted the ship. I wasn't happy with the last two entries. Oh, and I wanted to make a point earlier with Mike talking about Viral. I did a complete rewatch of the VHS franchise last year for the entry that they released last year. I went ahead and just watched every VHS movie. And I gotta say, I'm coming around to Viral. Viral is no longer my least favorite VHS movie. Like, after watching it last year, I really like the skateboarding segment. And yes, admittedly, the magician segment is weird, but if you can accept the weirdness of it, it's not a terrible segment. And then a couple other segments are, and the wraparound in Viral is a little bit better than some of the future wraps that we get later on. So, yeah, I gotta say, I came around to Viral. It's not a favorite by any stretch. It's still in the bottom, like 2 or 3 entries, but it's no longer my least favorite. I definitely came around on it. So, for whatever that's worth, you know. And I know Don hasn't seen Viral yet, so I don't want Don going into it thinking that it's absolutely going to be the worst one. It might be your least favorite. Absolutely. That's a possibility. But
it's got a high bar to clear after 99.
Oh, absolutely. So, yeah. Like I said, I just wanted to defend Viral a little bit because I never hear anybody speak positively about Viral. And like I said, I warmed up to it a little bit more. Admittedly, after first watch, I was the same as everybody else. It's the weakest entry. It's barely worth watching, blah, blah, blah. But after watching it a couple of more times over the years, yeah, I've come around to it. So if you haven't watched VHS Viral, you know, like if you're avoiding it because of everything that people have said, go into it. You know, clear your mind, no expectations, just go into it and try to, you know, have a little bit of fun with it. Because I think there's fun to be had in Viral. But it is still one of the weaker entries. So, you know, what are you going to do?
Yeah. All right. Well, that's going to do it for VHS Beyond and this episode. So let's see if there's anything else for people to listen to us on that's new. Venom, what do you got?
I think the only thing new that we have is the main show. Creature Comforts episode 30 was released last week or a week before. I forget exactly. On that one, we take a look at Dwayne Johnson's Rampage, which was a pretty fun episode and a fun little movie. Spoiler. I know we did the main show. I think the main show Mike finally put out, I think, right? Is it out?
No, it's not out yet.
Oh, it's not out. Okay. Well, then I'll let Mike talk about that one since he almost never has anything to talk about by the time we get to the end. Obviously, fresh cuts every week. We got episode 31 of Creature Comforts recording this weekend. I'll keep the title of the movie under my hat because it's a first time watch for me. So I'm not going to talk about it until I watch it. And I think that's it. I'm still waiting to hear on my guest spots for Cut to the Chase and Podcast Under the Stairs. Once I hear about those and they're recorded, I'll let you guys know. But yeah, otherwise it's kind of slim pickings. It's October. You know, we all, maybe not all of us, but a lot of us do like our October watches where we watch at least one horror movie every day, obviously. And this year I decided to do childhood horror. So basically, I'm looking at all the movies that meant something to me in the 70s and 80s, like before I turned 18. So basically up to 1988. Everything that made me love Halloween. So there is going to be hardcore horror on it. There's going to be Dawn of the Dead and Exorcist and stuff like that. But you're also going to see stuff like It's the Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown, the Halloween that almost wasn't, the Garfield Halloween special. I mean, like I said, as a kid, I still loved horror, but still loved cartoons too, and any Halloween special I was always on board for. So anyway, the whole point of me bringing that up is that, October is a tough month for horror podcasters because, we're watching our movies. We're still trying to record. Obviously, on Fresh Cuts, we record every week. So I am definitely glad that we ended up doing VHS and not the original movie we're going to talk about, because, man, I got 40 minutes into that movie and I was so disappointed with where.
Yeah, that's where I was mentally checked out pretty much right around that same point. I think it was the same reasons, actually.
It's just so much exposition, so much talking. God, like the first movie did, and Mike said it well in a private chat earlier, where the first movie was able to convey its message with minimal dialogue. Like you knew what was happening just by watching the action. This one fucking explains everything, and it's like, just stop. Like, I want to see some action. And 40 minutes in, it's like one person has died. It's like, this is barely a horror movie. Not to say that the first platform was a horror movie, but, we still did it because it was horror adjacent enough. Yeah. But yeah, I didn't finish the second one. Mike finished it, so maybe he could chime in on whether it became more horror towards the second half. But yeah, for me, it just didn't work.
I finished it, but I checked out. Like, I think I was pretty much at that point. I was like, okay, yeah, I think they're probably going to switch over and do VHS, because I don't think we ever could. I don't ever remember us confirming it in the chat. I think it was just one of those where I think I was like, okay, yeah, I think we're probably just going to end up switching to this anyway. So yeah, I think at that point I mentally checked out and I didn't really take much notes after that. And I finished it, but I don't remember much.
Yeah. I mean, admittedly, the reason that we were going to do the platform was mainly because of how much I love the first one. I like the first one a lot, but this week we had a lot of options. I mean, we had the Salem's Lot remake, we had VHS, we had the platform. We have multiple movies that just came out last week that we could still talk about, that could still be considered fresh. So, yeah, we had a lot of options, but I'm glad we went with what we went with, because it keeps up our streak of not missing a VHS movie on this show. So that makes me happy.
True.
All right. Is it dawn now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Not much. Creature Comforts should be coming soon. Look out for Indie Film Cafe. It should be released sometime during this month. Don't have a confirmed date, but I'll let you know when that is available. And yeah, upcoming season of Horror Countdown in the new year.
Cool. For me, yeah, it's just I got to work on the main show. What else do I got? That's it, actually. I've been like talking to different people in side chats about, I don't mean right now, but just in general about horror stuff, and I'm like, none of that stuff's a podcast. What am I thinking? But yeah, just the main show that I got to get out, and then I'm thinking for October we'll try to do like a normal episode, but also maybe a Halloween commentary, because those are easy to get out with minimal post-production even being done. And I think next up for Fresh Cuts would be Terrifier 3 comes out this week, right?
Yes, sir. I got my ticket for Thursday screener. I'm there.
Nice. Cool. All right. Well, with that said, that's going to wrap us up for this episode. Thanks, everyone, for listening. We will be back in about a week's time with the next episode. So let's say bye to our listeners.
Later.
Just because there's an alien in it doesn't make it sci-fi.
Peace.